So today we are talking about AI as a leverage, not as a tool, and how leaders can use it to build organizations that think, decide, and execute faster. And I skipped my introduction because Linda has already made that. But my name is Susanne Ekström, and I work with CEOs and leadership teams, mostly in established companies across the US and Europe. And what I see over and over again is that leaders, they are capable, and their people, they are smart, but often the systems and the processes they have are slow and not fully working together. And I want to talk about why this happens and what leaders can do differently. And by the end of this session, I want you to see AI as a way to build a company that thinks faster, decides better, and executes with less friction. And I have written 2 books, as Linda mentioned, in what I call the Smarter Leadership series. The first part is about inner leadership, how you can lead yourself to become a smarter leader. But even smarter leaders with strong inner skills hit a limit when the system and setup around them can't carry their leadership. And that's why my book 2 focuses on the outer leadership, how leadership scales through systems, structures, and now AI. It looks at how decisions, authority, and responsibility should flow through the organization. And I call this a new leadership architecture. And that is the theme for today's presentation. And as I said, most organizations today are not failing, they are not broken or not poorly led. And they are doing exactly what they were designed to do. But the world is changing faster than ever. New customer expectations, new technologies, new regulations, increased competitions, etc., etc. And most organization systems were designed for a different reality. They were built for stability, predictability, and control. And the challenge leaders feel today comes from a mismatch. A mismatch where the leaders now sit in the middle of these 3 parts: a fast environment, stable systems and processes, and a control-based leadership. And leadership today carries more responsibility than ever. Decisions aren't just made with one function anymore. They cut across different silos, technologies, people, risks, customers, countries, and brands. And at the same time, many leadership roles are still designed around the assumption that the leader will personally oversee and control what matters most. And this creates bottlenecks, pressure, and frustration. And it's hard to scale. And this won't be a technical talk, and it's not about any tools. It's about leverage. So how leadership can create speed and how intelligence can be shared in a smarter way. And how the company can think together and execute as one system. So let's make this a bit more tangible. In my book, we follow a leader named Marcus. Marcus, he runs a logistic company. It's respected and reliable. And it is still profitable. But something has started to change. A smaller AI native competitor is winning contracts Marcus used to think were safe. Not because they know the industry better or have stronger relationships, but because they move faster, they bid faster, and they route faster, and they see supply chain risks earlier. And Marcus starts to realize the real problem. His company is not slow because his people are weak. His company is slow because the structure around them is too heavy. He has 3 systems that don't talk to each other, and he has information trapped in different places all over the company. And he has a weekly status meeting where it takes 4 hours and 11 people just to get one answer. This is what I call the cathedral. The structures most organizations run on today were not mistakes. They were really, really smart designs for their time, regardless if it was started 5, 10, or 40 years ago. The top-down structure reduced risk, control creates safety, and this model has worked extremely well, and that is why it still exists. But the cathedral is also heavy. It's not built to move fast. And that is the problem that many organizations face today. In practice, this design creates a very specific pattern. Information flows upward for validation, and decisions flow downward for execution. Every layer adds time, and every approval mostly adds a need for coordination. And we also have these solid stone walls between different parts of the organization, creating silos, both of people and of system. And no one intends to slow things down, but the structure does it automatically. And this creates what I call the gray work. Work that feels necessary and really is necessary, but doesn't actually move anything forward. Gray work is draining because it consumes attention without creating progress, and often leads to leaders feel mentally tired. Over time, this gray work becomes a hidden cost, the managerial tax. And this is time spent aligning, coordinating, clarifying, and informing. Many leaders feel this tax, but they don't have a way to describe it. And you pay it every day, and it never shows up in any financial reports. So identifying the managerial task is really important, because then you can do something about it. So think about your own company for a moment. So where do your leaders pay this tax every week? Now, let's go back to how leadership roles were designed in the cathedral, in a generic way of speaking. In most organizations, the leadership role was built around one core idea, that the leader is the central decision maker. This made sense when the environment was more stable and the organization was easier to understand from the top. The leaders could hold most of the context in their heads, and they could see the bigger picture and control the risks. But as the complexity increases, something changes. The leader doesn't become less capable, but the job becomes too big for one or a couple of people to carry. The leadership role needs to evolve. The future leader is not someone who decides everything faster. It's someone who designs how decisions happen. An orchestrator focuses on where decisions should be made, what context people need to decide well, and what should not be escalated anymore. And this is not about letting go of responsibility, but moving responsibility into the system. Many leaders feel relief when they hear this, because it explains why trying harder stopped working. That it is their role itself that needs a redesign. And this is where AI fits in a very practical way. Leaders, they often don't need help making decisions. They need help freeing up their cognitive load, which is the mental effort it takes just to keep things going. The same goes for their people. Using AI in the right way, you don't need to replace your team. You are leveraging AI to free your people from their mundane, repeatable tasks so they can instead create, innovate, and make faster and better decisions. Also think about how you can use AI as a fantastic chief of staff to filter information, highlight what matters, prepare decisions, etc. This is exactly where AI adds value. AI doesn't make and never should make decisions. It prepares leaders and their people to make better ones. Used well, AI removes bottlenecks, overheads, delays, but not authority. It removes the need to search across systems for information, the need to manually summarize updates, and the constant back and forth just to get clarity. But the judgment, the accountability, and leadership always stay human. In the book, Marcus also faces a difficult moment. His new AI suggests a new delivery route during the holiday rush. On paper, the route looks better. It's more profitable and efficient. But Marcus sees what the system doesn't see clearly enough. The route would exhaust his drivers. So he blocks the suggestion. Because smarter leadership is not only about optimizing for profit, it is also about deciding what the company won't sacrifice to get that profit. And that is the point. AI can give you options, show you patterns, and help you move faster. But judgment, accountability, and values must stay human. And you might have this set up, not have this set up yet within your company, but I'll bet that your people are already using AI without your knowledge or approval. Leaders might see or suspect that their people are using unauthorized tools and might think to themselves, what's happening? Are we losing control here? Is this risky? Definitely valid concerns. But your people, they don't create these workarounds because they want to break rules. They do it because your official systems and processes make their work harder than it needs to be. So, shadow AI is a proof of where your systems are too slow for reality and where your leadership design hasn't yet caught up. When leaders treat this as a positive signal instead of a threat and a big no, they can together create a roadmap on how to change this for the better in a safe way, creating a so-called shared brain. Most organizations have a memory problem, not a data problem. Important decisions are made in meetings, for example, and then the reasoning about the decisions, they disappear. And much information stays in people's inboxes and files, and lots of knowledge lives only in people's heads. A shared brain means that the organization remembers with you. Decisions are captured and the why behind them is known. And people can see what has already been decided and why. The systems are connected and can trigger new actions based on the input data in one of them, so it can flow through the systems automatically. So a shared brain is the system that makes the organization's knowledge, decisions, context, and priorities visible and usable across the company. And when this exists, people stop guessing, they stop escalating things unnecessarily, and they don't stop their work to get clarification. And just this part alone reduces the leadership pressure more than most people expect. Unfortunately, the shared brain doesn't appear just because you add AI. It starts with something much more basic, and that is cleaning the pipes. Most organizations have too many tools, and the information it lives in project tools, emails, documents, ERP systems, CRM systems, etc. And often the same information exists maybe in 5 different versions. And your people, they don't know which version to trust. They spend time checking, reconciling, and asking around. And leaders become the final source of the truth by default. So clean the pipes, remove the system silos, and then integrate, and after that start automating. And this means deciding which systems actually matters, which information needs to flow between them, and what can be deleted. And deleting is just as important as adding. Every silo you remove reduces your cognitive load, and every new clean connection increases your speed. And this is not an IT exercise. It's a leadership decision. Because once the pipes are clean, AI can actually help people think and decide instead of just moving mess around faster. So find the hidden work before you add AI. Look for the knowledge gaps, the decision delays, and the system silos. AI creates leverage when it removes the searching, the checking, the clarifying, and the coordinating that slows people down. And up to this point now, we've pretty much talked about systems, structures, and flows. Now let's bring this back to you and your people. Most organizations try to empower people by pushing responsibility out in the organization. But responsibility without support doesn't fully work. Like letting them search for information, trying to reconstruct past decisions, checking whether something's still valid, and often worrying about what they might be missing. This is not a great support system for your middle managers, for example. This is where the Kentaur model comes into place, giving your people a digital horse, so they can go further and faster than they could on their own, and to have them be connected to the shared brain. And if we are going to build this Kentaur team, we have to change how we measure people. In the cathedral, we often measured output. We looked at what they produced. And in the world of AI, output is cheap. AI can generate 1,000 reports in a minute. And if you continue to measure your team on output, you are encouraging them to be busy rather than effective. And you want to rewrite your job and role descriptions to focus on judgment rather than output. When systems, leadership roles, and your environment starts to align, trust increases because people have clarity, and speed increases because coordination costs drop. And resilience increases because the organization doesn't rely on a few specific extra special individuals. Leadership stops feeling fragile, and if one person is away, things still move. And that is what leverage feels like. And this is the huge change behind everything we talked about. A cathedral organization relies on control. Decision moves up, authority sits at the center, approvals move down, and safety comes from central oversight. A colony works differently. In a network or colony, in a biological sense colony, intelligence is distributed. People, they don't wait for permissions. They act with accountability. Clarity is built into the system. So people know the goal, they know what they own, and they know when to act and when to escalate. And this is how you get speed without chaos. And this is how organizations move fast without burning out leaders and/or their people. And this is where AI and shared intelligence truly support the leadership. The goal is not that every person uses AI separately. The goal is that the company starts thinking together and executing as one system. The old model was built for control. The new model must be built for shared context, distributed decisions, and faster execution. So Marcus, he redesigned the system. He didn't try to become faster at answering every question. He built a system where fewer questions needed to come back to him. He created a shared brain, so decisions and context were no longer trapped in meetings, inboxes, and people's heads. He cleaned the information flow so people could trust the data they used. And he created a cross-functional delivery node with people from logistics, sales, and warehouse operations. They had a clear budget, clear guardrails, and the authority to make decisions close to the work. That node launched a pilot in 10 days without Marcus supervising every detail. That is an example of a shift from a cathedral to colony. And this is what a future-ready organization feels like. Confident because people know what, when, and who to decide. Fast because decisions, they don't pile up at the top. Adaptive because intelligence lives through the system. And this is not about freeing leaders to do, this is about freeing leaders to do the work only they can do, not about removing or replacing them. So this is your leadership choice. If you don't intentionally design how decisions, information, and responsibility flow, the organization will fall back to old, well-known habits. And those habits usually turn the leader into the bottleneck. More escalation, more pressure, and less leverage. As Jim Rohn said, either you run the day or the day runs you. So if you like today's content and ideas, you'll find more of this in the Smarter Leadership books. So the book 1 is for inner mastery, and the second book is for leadership that scales with AI. In both books, you'll also find real-world examples and templates for 99-day roadmaps on how you can begin your work. And also here you have the QR code to the book series on Amazon.